What is up, guys? Welcome back to Punk Rock Radar. And today we're doing kind of a special episode, something we've never really done, kind of just talking about a specific topic. And that topic today is why aren't there more women in punk rock? And we also have a very special guest today to talk about us with us. So we thought if we're going to talk about women in punk rock, maybe we should get a woman to talk about punk rock with us. So we've got Rachel-O-Rama. So Rachel, would you like to introduce yourself, tell people what you do, and what do you think of this question being posed right now?
I'm Rachel-O-Rama. I am a punk rock DJ. I have a radio show on KXFM in Laguna Beach. That's 104.7. You can catch it on anywhere you stream live music if you don't listen or you don't live directly in Laguna Beach. And then you can listen to it afterwards on Spotify because I post it there and you can check all that fun stuff out. So the question that you have, there definitely is a lack of females in punk, whether it be in the punk industry or even in music. Mostly in music, I think, because if there's a woman that's in a band, she's generally the lead singer, and then it's called a female-fronted punk rock band. And it's like, why does it need that label? Why, I tried looking up female punk rock bands yesterday so we could prep for this, and it was like all that came up was female-fronted punk rock bands. And I was like, well, I want to know what punk bands have a female drummer or a female guitarist or bassist or something.
Yes, exactly.
I'll take whatever I could find. It was only female-led, with singers, and it was like it's really disappointing that it's so overlooked and it's in that specific category rather than like, oh, this is an awesome punk band, rather than this is an awesome female-led punk band. And it's like, why does that even matter? So
it's like they're in their own little category, and if they get like this, like they're good for a female punk band. That's what almost sounds like almost like condescending. Definitely, I agree with you on that.
Exactly. It helps to at least draw your attention to it so you can identify, oh, okay. Because sometimes when you listen to it, you immediately think, oh, well, I didn't realize that, Scowl had a lead singer or a female lead singer or something. And it's like, well, like if you had never listened before, and it's like, well, why do you need to know that? Why does it matter? I feel like there's a lot of female punk bands that might not advertise that there's females in the band, that it matters, because a lot of people don't want it to matter. But to some females, it does matter. And then, but people don't want that label either.
No, 100%. It's kind of like a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
But we'll get into John here. And just real quick, John, what do you think of this question being asked? And also, who asked this question? Why are we talking about this right now? Would you like to talk about that real quick? Then we'll get into the kind of meat and potatoes of this conversation. I've got a couple questions we're going to go through and just see our best off-the-cuff answer these. It's not like a ton of preps. Don't expect for this deep analysis. We're going to solve all the issues that are going on here. It's just we're just kind of off the cusp, trying to figure it out as we go, basically. But John, what do you got to say?
Yeah, so this is not coming from an outsider. This is not someone who isn't versed in the punk rock scene. This is from Krang, international touring punk rock band. So I'm assuming that since they posed this, that they're seeing this at a lot of venues, all over the world. That, personally, when I go to a show, I would say it's maybe 85% men. I would say somewhere in that 80% range. So I definitely see what they're saying. And from my perspective, I just, from a male perspective here, when I go to a show, I feel like every time there's people there who are causing problems. You know what I mean? There's always the scumbags at these shows. And I personally don't like dealing with them. It's not as prevalent as it was in the early 2000s when I used to go when I was younger. But even now as an adult, there's I feel like every time I go, there's some sort of confrontation or somebody's in your face or too drunk or spilling something on you. I don't know if that contributes to it. So I was kind of Rachel, I love your perspective on that. The last show, Lewis and I went to see Bad Religion. And there was a guy getting in both of our face, maybe 2 inches from our face, incorrectly, incoherently screaming the lyrics of this song. It's and we're what do you do in this situation? And he's spitting his beer as he's saying it. And I'm man, I don't want to be here right now. So does the typical patron, not trying to stereotype anybody, but does the typical patron that are maybe a handful of people like this at a punk rock show, do you think that's something that possibly discourages women from wanting to go?
I don't know if that in particular, it might, women, and it depends on the age range too, because I think like women my age, they have kids at home, their priorities are different. So they're like, they tend to be the house taker carers, in one way or another. So the husband will go off and go to the show and have a good time with his friends, and the wife will stay home. And I hang out with so many husbands and my own husband will go with me, but I hang out with so many husbands at concerts that I'm like, why don't you bring your wife? And when I finally meet wives, I'm like, oh, okay. And, they're always surprised to meet me because they're like, why do you go to so many shows? And I'm like, why don't you go to so many shows? And there's typically, I notice like a lot of like protection with the husbands or with the guys, standing around their girlfriends with their arms on the barricade so the girl can be up front so they don't get hit by the mosh pit and whatever. I think it's like, there's always some ding dong that's going to make some problems because they've drunk too much or whatever. But actually at the last Bad Religion show I went to last month, it was the same thing, but it was a couple. It was a man and a woman who was causing problems for one of my friends because they were like super close to her. So I just went up and switched places with her and made that issue go away. You kind of have to deal with it in your own way that you can. But and sometimes the thought process to like, oh, it's a punk show. That means I get to go drink as much as I want, act a fool, and punch somebody. And it's like, that is so not what this is about. And people use it as an excuse. But generally, I've always found it as the people that don't typically go to punk shows and that just want to go to find some trouble. They just want to go to fight somebody or something. They aren't the typical punk music patron I've seen.
100%. Yeah, it's always people that you wouldn't expect to see there that are like, that's 100% right.
No, yeah, it's true. Except for my friend Cody back in the day. He used to drink whiskey and get a little too crazy with it. We had to drag him out of a couple shows. So, but let's go into a first question here. I'm going to ask you guys real quick. And this is going to seem like kind of a dumb question, but it's just kind of one we want to put a pin in so everyone knows exactly what we're talking about. When we're talking about punk rock and an issue with women in the punk scene, do you think we're talking about all of punk rock, or do you think some genres are better at incorporating kind of women into the folds? Like maybe pop punk, I think is probably a little bit easier for a lot of women to get into than maybe like hardcore punk or skate punk or melodic hardcore and stuff like that. And so do you think we should concentrate mostly on those, or do you think all of these kind of subgenres need help to some extent being more accommodating to women? So,
I personally feel like they all need help. There's no excess of women in any particular category of punk, and some may have more than others, but there is no oversaturation of females in lead singing, in musicians, in anything. So I think everybody needs to continue to be as inclusive as possible.
Definitely. So yeah, we'll kind of be going through everything here, and I think it'll go into John. Do you have anything to say to that, or we can go to the next question here, which is kind of just our experience at different shows and maybe like what you're seeing and when you're seeing it. I guess we kind of addressed that a little bit, but I guess like the second question here is just kind of personal experience with the scene, shows, and the gender gap between punk fans, and I think. I'll just say, like, it definitely depends on the genre to an extent. Like, obviously, when I used to go to a lot of crust punk shows or a lot of folk punk shows and stuff like that, it would be, like, probably 95% dudes at these shows a lot of the time. And there would be, like, a group of, like, punk girls that would show up. I always remember that. There was, like, a crew. They were, like, a crew, and they kind of went together, and they came to all these shows. And it was always cool to talk to them and everything like that. But it was, like, 95%. Man, especially at crust and hardcore punk shows. And I'm trying to think of exactly why that is. And I don't know if it's like the most friendly or accommodating space for like women to go in there. And also I think just some of the lead singers of the bands and stuff like that, they're a little, I would say kind of perverted a lot of times. I've seen them be, and a little bit kind of sexual harassment to some degree with
Yeah.
some of the women at these shows and stuff like that. And
Um,
but then there'll be other shows like I go to, and it's like 50-50 women and men. And I'll kind of talk about some of those ones I went to, and it's totally different. But do you think there's like an issue with kind of like the hardcore punk and the crust punk scene and stuff like that, getting women a good bit of time? And what do you think the issue there is, Rachel? Then we'll go to John if you have anything to
yeah,
say.
I wouldn't necessarily. I personally haven't seen one genre of punk over another. I think definitely in certain genres there is more of an idea that where women feel a little bit more unsafe than others.
Yeah.
But I feel like a lot of women might not go to shows if they don't have a friend to go, because
Yeah.
dudes go to a show by themselves, no problem, generally.
Exactly. Yeah.
And girls won't, and girls want to go with a friend because then they feel unsafe. They want to drink or something and they feel unsafe in an Uber by themselves. So they can't drink and they don't want to go if they can't drink, if they don't have a friend going and they don't have a designated driver or they can't find someone to go with or something. So it's that I think it's the feeling of just the lack of safety that some women might feel, whether that be because of a past issue or because of something they've seen or heard. I personally don't have that feeling. There might be certain areas or certain bands that I might not want to go see by myself, but
Yeah.
I mean, I've definitely gone to shows by myself, especially if I know that I'm going to see a bunch of friends there anyways. So
Yeah.
a lot of girls I know will kind of like try to team up and meet friends there and hang out in certain areas, well-lit areas or something. But I definitely feel like there is a safety issue where women will feel a certain way, depending on the band, depending on the how
The scene.
remark, whatever. Yeah, because it might cause issues with drunk guys starting to get a little handsy with a girl, and a woman at that in that environment might start to feel unsafe, or it might become unsafe for her because women are like, if there's one girl up there and she's talking about her nipples or something, and then that starts to put ideas in drunk guys' heads or something, then that might start to make other women in the crowd feel unsafe. So, I think it's just a matter of safety too.
Yeah. Okay. Definitely. And John, what is your perspective on different shows and like kind of like the gender gap that you're seeing at different shows and like has there been shows you've gone to where there've been like 50-50 women and stuff like that?
I when you were telling like your part, the show, so Leftover Crack used to do in Brooklyn, it was called Cracktoberfest, right?
Yeah.
That is probably the biggest split, closer to women and men being equal at that show. It was like unreal.
Really?
Like I would say like it was like close to 50-50 at those Cracktoberfest because it was kind of like an event, and like a lot of that community for me anyway, the crust community is like, I don't know, it's more like retain some of that punk ethos where it's like it is like a community. The people who are in that like scene, it's more of like a lifestyle. So that show was actually very like probably the most outside of like a Warped Tour or something like that. I would say it's got the biggest, like the closest of women and men actually. Like for me, the ones that are like the most split, like heavy men, are like you were saying before, like melodic hardcore stuff, or like a Pennywise or something like that. Whenever they roll around, it seems to be like 90-95, which is weird because they're like a pretty accessible band, but that's what I like. You call them like the bro bands, I guess. Like it's very rare to see a lot of women there.
No, I definitely agree with you there. I think an interesting one I've always seen was the band Days and Days, where I felt like they had like a really involved female fan base. They're kind of like a folk punk band, and a lot not as many other folk punk bands I don't think got as much female fans as those are. And I think one of the reasons why is because there was a female singer in the band and who also played stuff. And I think women also like to see other women obviously up on stage doing what all, just doing punk rock with all this stuff like that. And I think that's also makes it, when you see another woman on stage as well, do you feel like that also kind of adds like a feeling of safety for women, where it's just like, oh, this is like a band, like, a woman's already involved, they're already up on the stage, they're doing stuff. This feels a little bit more safe to be here. Feels a little bit more like inclusive and stuff. Do you think that has any play into like, how people like view shows and stuff like that?
It definitely helps.
Yeah.
But like, for instance, I was in line for tickets at a venue for at the Garden Amp for I don't know, like Bad Religion, and Scowl was playing, who was a female lead singer. They were playing like 2 days later, and there was a guy standing behind me that was like, "Oh, I'm just in line for tickets for Scowl for in 2 days. They have a chick lead singer. She's so hot." And it's like, well, yes, okay, I personally think she is also hot, but it's like, why is that even like? Why does that need to be said? Rather than, oh, that band kicks ass, or
Yeah,
oh, they're
exactly.
a great band. The chick lead singer can really scream, can really whatever, hit her notes, whatever. When she has a huge range. It's, oh, she's so hot, and it's like, really, like that's all you're getting from all of this. So there is a level that where some women can feel safe, but then it has a reverse effect where some dudes are just there to check out the chicks, and so it kind of like counteracts the whole thing, and it's
Gotcha.
it's a give and take. So it's I guess it just depends on the crowd and the environment and the venue and who you're with, who you're around.
Definitely, I can see that. I never thought of that. I mean, definitely can see that happening there. But I guess like overall, you would just say it's definitely always more positive to have like a woman on stage and stuff like that in a punk band and stuff like that for women going there. But yeah, I can definitely see that as well. I've probably had friends who've said stuff like that. So, well, I guess we'll go to the next question here if you guys want to here, which is an important one I think to talk about, which is gatekeeping in punk rock, and does it affect women coming into the scene? I guess we'll start with you again, Rachel. Like, how do you view, like, kind of, obviously, punk, there is a long history of gatekeeping in punk. It's almost embedded in the culture to a degree. And I will say I do a little bit of defense of gatekeeping sometimes. I think it's incredibly negative, but also sometimes I think it brings people together as a community where you're like, we want to maintain this. We want to maintain punk as this kind of DIY independent ethic. We don't want outside forces coming in. But I think at the same time, it kind of also can push a lot of women away because there's these like standards. And if you don't reach these standards, you're getting just kind of like bullied out of the scene. How do you feel about that, and what have you seen with kind of gatekeeping in the punk scene and its effect on women?
I'm not entirely sure what I've seen, but I do know that doing or gatekeeping with punk definitely does punk a disservice, because the idea, especially around Southern California and in Orange County where I am, I've noticed from watching videos and pictures and whatnot of shows from other places, and you could tell that like people dress differently, and if whenever they go to a punk show, and if you dress differently, if you dress a certain way, you kind of fall into the fold, and you can kind of like hide in plain sight, and you're one of the crowd. But like especially around here, you generally wear all black. Literally, my entire wardrobe is all black. Not because I want to fit in, but because I just like all black. And it's fantastic it's very flattering. But if you if we went to a punk show and then there's somebody wearing a hot pink shirt, that person is going to stand out. Yeah. But if it's a band shirt, it's cool. But if there's someone that's like clearly had their whole entire wardrobe from Old Navy, and they're wearing a cowboy hat or something, stand out. Now they may love punk as much as everyone else there, but they're going to stand out. And I feel like even as far as like gatekeeping, everyone's going to look at that person and be like, well, what are they doing here? They clearly don't belong here. And, they may be the guitarist for the next band or another band that's fantastic and nobody recognizes them because people only pay attention to the lead singer apparently. And, it keeps blinders on, and it keeps you from seeing the bigger picture, because we want punk to, especially punk music, we want people to be successful. We want people like, when Face to Face blew up when they finally blew up with their second version of Disconnected in the 90s. I read an interview with with Trevor Keith, where he was like, well, I mean, of course, we're not selling out, but of course we want to be successful. Like, this is what we want to do with our lives. We want to play music. We don't want to have to go and get a regular job. So we want these bands to become more successful. Whether or not they become mainstream is one thing. If they change their sound to meet a certain qualification to be on mainstream radio, then it's different. But we want these bands like, like Blink. Blink gets such a bad rap. Like Blink, like Bad Religion, like Face to Face, and whoever. We want them to be successful. We want bands that we love, especially like that we're friends with, that come from our hometown. We want them to be successful. We don't want them to have to, work at the Apple store on their time off or whatever. We want them to make more music. We want them to help bring everyone else up. Because imagine the wave of bands that they could bring with them if they become successful also.
Yeah, you need a strong umbrella to kind of cast over and for people to build themselves off. Also, someone in our Discord, Doug Lachelle, he always said that selling out is not being successful in music. It is working a 9-to-5 job. He said that's the real stuff. I 100% agree with.
Man, that's a bumper sticker right there.
That's right. Yeah, selling out is not being successful in music. It's working a 9-to-5. Like, that's the real selling. You're really in the system then, man. So, but definitely. And I guess like. John, do you have anything to say on this kind of like gatekeeping in punk rock and what have you seen? It's weird to even talk about it in 2024. I feel like it still exists though, and it's still very prevalent in the punk scene. I mean, I think it's always going to be in the punk scene. Gatekeeping is a part of punk. It simply is, and you're never going to fully get rid of it. But definitely ways that we can kind of mitigate it and be like, hey, this is like we're gatekeeping way too hard here, where you're stopping bands from being successful, and you're stopping. And when bands get successful, that means they're getting a lot of women fans as well. Like that's how a band becomes successful. And that's why Blink was so successful as well, I believe, is they got a lot of female fans. A lot of female fans got into Blink-182, and that's definitely a sign of success. And I would say this, I was talking to my girlfriend about it, that most gatekeepers are men. And men always hate things women like, and that it's just kind of a hard truth, and it's hard to swallow sometimes. But I was that guy, like definitely, I was that hating on Blink, hating on all these pop punk bands. It'd be like, hear these girls talk about how cute Tom DeLonge was, or how stuff like that, and I'd be like, oh, this guy's like a fucking sellout. He's a fucking poser. Like none of this music is good. And then later I go back and I'm like, you were just being ridiculous. This music is awesome, and it's awesome that there are so many girls that are even into this type of music. So but I guess we'll go to John real quick. What do you have to say on kind of gatekeeping and punk and what you see and maybe some of your history with it?
I have mixed feelings. Like I feel like a lot of the gatekeeping, like it's kind of a cool feeling when you're listening to like a small band and like nobody knows who they are, right? It almost feels like it's written for like people like you. And then when like everybody's hearing it, like your neighbor downstairs who's banging on the ceiling with the broom, or like some asshole in the street, it becomes less for you. So like I don't personally, I like to think I don't gatekeep, but I do like to have like small bands that like I share with like my group of friends. Of course I share it all over Instagram, of course, because I want the credit for it, but I see it. And I like, as I try to like push bands and stuff, I don't like to see it with those bands. So like, I feel like it's multifaceted, but I see the reasoning behind it. But I think like Rachel and you said, like it's best for the scene. The more people listening to punk, the more bands there are, the more records they're selling. Thus, the more albums they're recording after those records sell. Right? If you love this band and they've got 16 followers and they spend $3,000 recording a 7-inch and nobody buys it, there's not going to be another 7-inch, right? It's a sunk cost. So I think at the end of the day, as much as it pains a lot of us old punks, that the more popular a band gets, the better it is, the more music they're going to pump out.
Yeah, the better music too. If they have money, if they have more money for a better production, you want them to have better production. You don't want it to suck. You don't want it to sound like they recorded it in their bathroom, and sometimes that's all they can afford.
It's not charming forever, right? That first demo. No,
it's charming for the first demo, but then, you got to evolve here. We got to get some better equipment here. So we got to tune our guitars at least this time. But yeah, I guess we'll go to the next question here, which is kind of a two-part question, which is kind of like, is this a punk specific problem, do we think? Which I obviously think it's not. I think we don't have to, but this is more of a question. I want to know how each of us kind of got into punk. And I definitely want to hear from Rachel because, I want to see how you got into punk and why a punk appealed to you as, if there was, how'd you get into it?
It is the stupidest story ever. Like so I grew up in a really strict Christian household. So I listened to 50s with my dad and Christian rock with my mom.
Relatable.
Until I got money for my 13th birthday. And I was like, oh, I want to go to Sam Goody to go. That's how old I am. I want to go to Sam Goody to go buy some albums. And I remember reading there were these cute boys at my church who wore these shirts that said like Bad Religion and Pennywise on it. And I was like, I don't know what that is, but I want to get into that. That looks cool because I like the design on the shirt. And, I wanted an excuse to talk to them, which is so stupid. Okay, I was 13. Let me just remind you. So I ended up getting Pennywise Unknown Road, Bad Religion. Oh my gosh, the one with the guy on flames on the front. And which one?
Suffer.
Thank you. Yes. And Suicidal Tendencies. And I think I put in Bad Religion or Pennywise first, one of those two, and my head exploded. I never took them out of my tape deck. It was the most amazing thing I had ever heard in my entire life. And I was like, where has this been? I can't believe this. And then my brother listened to Slayer and heavy metal and Pantera and everything. So I was kind of used to that like heavy sound, but this was different. This just hit totally different. And I've been hooked ever since.
Hell yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. So, but John, do you want to say, how'd you get into punk rock? I'm curious. So, you did it.
Yeah, I mean,
Rachel did it for Cute Boys.
Yeah.
And, did you do it for Cute Boys, John?
I've said it before. I had no idea what punk was either. Like I'm the Dookie generation. I heard Basket Case on the radio, and I didn't know what punk rock was. I didn't know what punk rock was probably for like 5 years after that. I was just like, I just like this music. That was my start, but I feel like I have such a generic story. Like I was listening to just whatever was on the radio because I was like a kid. So it wasn't until I heard like Damn It and then subsequently What's My Age Again that like, again, another reason to not gatekeep. I would have probably never gone down that path if I didn't hear like these songs on like we just had the radio. This is like really you weren't going to find any bands on the internet. You have to be like getting faxes from these random bands back then. So yeah, I just used the radio and MTV and the liner notes on CDs and then sampler CDs, that's the way it was in the late 90s. So that's my story. Elliot, I know your story is a lot like Rachel's actually.
Yeah, definitely. Similar. Yeah,
Cute Boys.
Yeah, Christian household as well, where I think it wasn't even like 50s rock or 70s rock that my dad was into. He was into like the modern, contemporary, alternative Christian rock. So he was into Switchfoot and like Mercy Me and bands like that. And that was like the kind of the music that I knew, other than my mother, who really loved Maroon 5. So that was kind of the only music I really listened to. And then obviously Green Day once again came out with American Idiot because I'm younger than John here. So his first Green Day record was Dookie. Mine was American Idiot. But Green Day kind of did it again with like a whole other generation of people with American Idiot. They did it twice, which is absolutely incredible for any band to be able to do, to like reinvent themselves and reignite the punk scene two times. And so I didn't know it was punk, though. I had no clue what punk even was. I just knew people liked Green Day. And, like, I mean, probably the songs I heard weren't the most punk, like Boulevard of Broken Dreams and stuff like that. But I loved that stuff. I never heard stuff like that before. It was like sad. It was like moody. It was like, really raw, emotionally raw. And then my buddy, he somehow got into punk rock. I can't remember how it came to. I think his guitar teacher was into punk and showed him some of the 80s hardcore bands. And he gave me a mix CD that had like Dead Kennedys, Circle Jerks, Bad Religion, and stuff like that. And I wore that CD out. I was like one, that's the only music I listened to. I was a Christian kid. I think my parents just got divorced at the time, so I was definitely looking for some sort of outlet to kind of find myself. And punk rock was like definitely like a place I went down a huge rabbit hole to try to like find my identity as like a person. And it absolutely changed my entire life. Like that mix CD my friend gave me. So and stuff like that. And like I see like how kind of swerve back to the question here of kind of like, is this a punk specific problem? Like, punk obviously appeals to like the outcast a lot of the time, like the loser, the kind of dork, nerds, geeks, freaks, and romantic types. Punk is all about all of that. And I think a lot of times, like, guys will go down this rabbit hole a lot more than women will. And do you think that's true? And why do you think that is? And what are like ways that like women can be like kind of more because there's loser guys, there's loser girls, and the loser girls can get into punk rock too. We need more of everybody. So
Yeah.
just what do you kind of think of that? Like, is this this punk specific problem, or do you think this is kind of a lot of like obviously a lot of alternative music and heavy music and stuff like that kind of have this problem with women? But I think punk appeals to a specific type of person, and so how can we get like do you see that, and can you relate to that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like there might be more people that are into punk, like both of you said, there might be more people into punk than they don't realize they're into punk,
Yeah.
and I feel like maybe they just don't have the right influence because for whatever reason, and, we're still trying to figure that out. Chicks don't typically listen to punk, but guys do because guys will lean generally sometimes more towards the heavy metal, the heavier rock or whatever. I feel like a lot of that might be a lot of parenting and a lot of influence on what parents want their kids to listen to. And, you have a daughter and, oh, listen to Taylor Swift. Let's listen to Taylor Swift. But,
Sure.
a lot
Yeah.
of this, in my day, it was like Paula Abdul, whatever. Let's listen to this. Oh, she's a girl singer. You'll like her. So you kind of end up starting to like a certain genre and you just get used to it and you kind of just ride that wave and you keep on going until something stops you. And if nothing stops you, then you raise little Taylor Swifties and whatever. But with guys, it's like I've heard so many men say, "Oh, I got into I don't know, like Johnny Cash from my grandpa, and I got into the Rolling Stones from my dad." And it's like, well, you never hear women talk like that because I feel like a lot of it again is what people are influenced with. Like I was looking up. Was one of the reasons why I was looking up last night about about women, why women are typically singers. It isn't necessarily because they have a good voice. It's because men are led towards the electric guitar sound, towards the heavier sound, whereas women generally led to like, oh, here, play the clarinet, play the flute. How many girl drummers do you see? Like, it's so rare you find, or you see a girl bassist, and like nothing against bassists because it's a difficult job. I can't get my hands to type, let alone play an instrument. So, no shade on that. But I feel like some parents will lead their girls towards being a bassist because they think being a bassist is easier than being a guitarist,
I guess that's true. I feel like I do see more female bassists than guitar players sometimes. You're right. That's interesting.
Easier, not because of what that girl is capable of, but because that's what their parents led them to say, oh, we want you to do this because it'll be easier. You'll do better at this. And it's like, well, why don't you just put them in the hard one?
That's
maybe it's definitely not talent. That's for sure. But maybe it's like what the, parents could afford or whatever. I don't know. I think it's fucking stupid because, my daughter plays the drums.
hell yeah.
So I'm like, you're going for it just for that reason. But yeah, I think it's a lot of it in a weird twist of all of this comes to parenting too. And about like what you're led or what you're pushed to do,
So don't. I mean, we have a lot of people in our Discord and fans of ours that have daughters and kids and stuff like that. And they're always showing them punk rock and stuff like that. So we might be seeing a new wave of kind of more women getting interested in the punk rock. And I even have a buddy at work whose daughter loves to headbang to like 80s hardcore and the street punk bands that he likes to listen to, like Violent Society. I don't know if he plays in Violent Society, but bands like that. And so it's cool. He puts her on a skateboard and everything too, because girls can be skateboarders, girls can be in punk bands. You can play the guitar, you can do whatever you want to. And no, I think that's right. The parenting aspect and the kind of the expectations of what like women should be interested or where their talent should lie in like singing,
Yeah.
you know, or like playing the bass because like you said, it's easier. The guitar might be too much, and
Yeah.
um, I mean, definitely like the guitar nerd scene is definitely a boys' club as well. People
Yeah.
enjoy.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah,
I would
yeah.
say
Yeah.
even more. Yeah, that probably has a worse issue than the punk scene, but we'll leave that to
Yeah.
people who care about guitar solos because I'm not. I listen to punk. I don't really too much. So, but it's cool when they do it, but you don't need
Yeah.
it. But I guess we'll wrap up here with a final question right here, and this has been like a great conversation. So, you know, but we'll do the final one here, and I think at the end of it we can like recommend maybe a couple bands and stuff like that, and we'll also people down who watch this video definitely like leave a comment of like because sometimes we're just not aware of a lot of female bands and stuff like that,
Yeah.
or we're not aware of different artists that maybe can be pushed and supported and stuff like that. And so definitely
Yeah.
leave like comments down below of like bands and stuff that you love and bands that you want us to check out or talk about or up and coming new bands especially. And we could even people get aware of them and can go see them on tour and stuff like that. Definitely we want to support the scene. But the final question I guess here is just kind of like how can we get more women into punk, which is the original question that was truly being asked at the very beginning of this. We've wrapped around in a nice tight bow here. So I guess we'll start with you, Rachel, and then we'll go to John. Like, what do you think can be done to get more women into punk and stuff like that? And well, go ahead. Yeah, what do you think?
Just being more inclusive and being noticeable about the divide that you help create. Like, girls wearing rabbit pajamas and boys wearing dinosaur pajamas. Like, it's not about the animal. It's not about the colors. It's not about what you think your kids are capable of. I think it's about being self-aware of why do we push boys to do one thing and why do we push girls to do another? Why do I expect a man at a show who's drunk? He's probably going to try to assault me, whereas a girl won't. Why, like there's a lot of flip-flopping, and I feel like if we just like if there's a drunk guy or a guy at a show who's by himself, we could befriend him. If there's a girl at a show by herself, we could befriend her, And I feel like if we realize that how we add to the divide, then we can stop it,
No, definitely. No, 100%. So, John, what do you think here? What do you think we can do here?
Rachel, what you said before, like I've been having like this revelation now in my head. Like when I was little, I was given King Diamond CDs and I was given the tapes, Iron Maiden. My sister, who's only a year and a half younger than me, it was Billy Joel. It was the Grease soundtrack. It was completely different stratospheres of music, right? And completely independent of age. I was given guitar lessons. My sister was given piano lessons, right?
Yeah.
And so I feel like it's going to be on this generation, like a lot of this Dookie generation, the Enema generation. Like if you have kids, treat them the same. Like this, like I guess like punk rock was still kind of newish, like when we were born, right? I don't know if the first generation was having children just quite yet. So maybe, now that like our generations of age, we could have kids and stuff, we start taking on the responsibility, bestow that on them, like teach them. The Grease soundtrack is still great. Billy Joel is still great, but like, let's get some, let's mix it up a little bit. Like we can all listen to everything together.
We can stop the cycle.
Yeah, we can.
Stop the cycle.
I never thought of it that way, and it makes so much sense when you said it.
Blowing John.
Yeah, literally. I'm like, oh, it's right there. It's like, yeah.
I think both of what you guys said is perfectly like 100%. I think I'll just add like maybe just two different things. Is one, I think punks and people coming up need to get better with kind of social media as well. I think that's a way for a lot of women to get access to it. I think punk rock especially, I mean, other genres struggle as well. Metal struggles with, getting women involved and all sorts of things too. But I feel like I see a lot more kind of metal social media stuff that has brought in a ton of new fans and stuff like that. And I think when it does happen, the gatekeeping thing comes around where you see something like a punk rock TikToker or something like that. Like, look, that's a tool to be successful. That's a tool for independence. You may not like the company or whatever. You may think it's like, like an embarrassing to do, but that's important to do. Like that's how you get young people especially into the scene.
Yeah.
So also fashion. I mean, like obviously women a lot of time are into fashion, and I like fashion too. I think the punk rock aesthetic in fashion is super cool, and I know a lot of women do as well. And I don't think we should reject that either. I think we should definitely like. I know there's like you know, if you could do like a TikTok of like a girl showing other girls how she does her Liberty spikes, or like how to put pins and patches and stuff on jackets. I think these are all great ideas that would be like amazing to see people do. There used to be a YouTube show called I can't even find it now. I think it got wiped from the internet. It was so old. I don't know if anybody remembers this. If you remember this, let me know. Called Everyday Hardcore. It was like a little YouTube show with like 3 friends, and there was like a girl and 2 guys, and they would do stuff of like DIY, how to make your own jacket, DIY stuff like that. Yeah, like really cool stuff. I got to try to find it. I remember looking it up, trying to see it. And they also showed you how to do ramen noodle recipes because they assumed you were punk and you were poor, and how to cook ramen noodles, different recipes. So they would have the ramen noodle recipe segment, and they'd have like how to sew a patch on a jacket, just stuff like that. And I think that's really cool. And I think that can be brought up into the new age of social media, and that would make it really accessible to women and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think, right? You know what I mean? Like that would be awesome to see stuff like that. So because the punk has a great aesthetic, we should lean into it. When I was younger and I saw dudes with Liberty spikes and mohawks, I thought that was fucking cool. I thought patch jackets were fucking awesome. So definitely like do it, man. I mean, not everyone has to do that. Obviously, it's not your aesthetic. It's not your aesthetic. But if you want to lean into it a little bit, like 100%, I think it's awesome. But
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess we'll wrap up here, and just like any bands or anything you guys want to recommend, or any artists that you just want to off the top of your head or something like that. John, do you have anything here first, or that you could think of? Or
Yeah.
if not, we can just go ahead.
I have like, so I love The Last Gang. I had Noise in my my top of the year when it came out. They have a new record coming out. I know it's a pretty big band. The other ones I'd recommend, 4am, their last record that came out earlier this year. So good. And then let's do one maybe that's not just vocals, like we've been saying. The band Vera, they've been broken up for a while. They have a lady drummer, and they're awesome. If you like easycore, Newfound Glory stuff, go check out Vera. The drums are great on there. It's I still listen to it all the time. It's like 14 years old now. It's one of my favorite easycore records. So those are my recommendations.
Excellent. Rachel, go ahead. Do you have any band you want to recommend to us here?
You might be asking the right or the wrong person. I don't know. I got a pretty big list because I get a lot of music sent to me because a lot of people want to play it on the radio, or I got a lot of requests. So I'll rattle these off as fast as possible.
Go ahead.
Destroy Boys, Itchy Kitty, Scowl, Catbite, Pink Shift, Tsunami Bomb, The Last Gang, of course, Back Hop, No Bro, Go Betty Go, The Aqua Dolls, The Lindas, White Lung, they're a little bit older, Venomous Pinks, Cliff Diver. They have a female singer. They're not a female band, but they're amazing. They also have a saxophonist, which just blows me away. And also Scene Queen. Scene Queen is a little bit more in the larger pop punk, younger kids, as this old lady said.
We've seen it. We've been so curious about it. It looks wild.
The marketing campaign is out of this world.
Yeah, we were so curious to check it out at some point. We were thinking about like watching a video on stream one time, see what it is. But that's interesting. Yeah, I'd be curious. So I'm sorry, but sorry to interrupt. Do you have any more you want to?
I went to play. So she just came out with a new song. I was going to play it on the air, and then as I'm listening to it to try to edit it, I was like, no, I can't play this on the radio.
Okay. All right.
I couldn't get the whole song will just be bleeps.
Is it like kind of like a throwback to almost like a Kesha style pop punk or something? That's the vibe I was kind of getting. Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. Very good explanation for it. Yeah.
Okay. There we go.
I've seen her in an interview, and she's like super down to earth. She's not, you would think that like, a girl in that environment, in that, with that kind of publicity, being signed to a major label, might have an attitude or something, or anybody in that circumstance, but she's super down to earth and cool, which makes me like her even more. So definitely check her whole list out.
You named a lot of good bands, some that I haven't heard of, so I'm gonna have to play this back and kind of write them down of which ones I want to check out. But Destroy Boys, I remember listening to them a good bit. They have some pretty fun
the
songs.
Venomous Pinks, I was really into the last record too. That's a good shout out.
I guess just the two. I'll say right at the top of his. We got one that's for our record of the week in our Discord right now, which is Not on Tour, which is kind of like a female singer, kind of skate punk band. And then the other one, in the vein of a female not singing but just being in the band and hanging out, is Hell Beach. This record, Beach World. It's like a really
Oh yeah,
throwback, like
awesome.
'90s pop punk. It's a great record, and just I think it's just the girl guitarist. Don't quote me on that. I'm not 100%. She's not singing. That's all that matters. She's playing another instrument. Just kidding. But they're like a great, it's like a great like '90s throwback kind of sound with like a really fresh kind of production. So Hell Beach Beach World. It's like in my
So
top
good.
10 records of the year right now.
Same.
So yo, you too?
Yeah,
Nice.
I've been listening to it like nonstop for 3 weeks. It's so catchy.
No, dude, that's what I've been saying. Yeah, you should check it out definitely if you like. It's a really fun. Summer's winding down, but it's a great like summer
Yeah.
record. So fun.
Well, Rachel, you're in California, so you're not like us poor East
Oh.
Coasters where it's
Yeah,
already.
that's right.
It was 59 degrees this morning, and we're like, what the hell?
That's crazy. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was. No, it's. I have. Hopefully, you guys can't hear it. I have like 3 fans on me right now. I'm in my garage, which is also doubles as my studio. It's like 100 outside right now. I don't know. It sucks because like for
Yeah.
us, it gets hotter September, October, and or August, September, October, and everyone else is like, "Ooh, we love the fall," and I'm like, "No, it sucks so much." I just want the bugs to go back to hell where they came from.
Yes.
Those summer bugs are just the worst.
It's terrible. I've got the fruit flies keep invading my house, and I've got to get rid of them. So they're the worst things ever. I hate those guys. But I guess we'll wrap this up here. I mean, I thought this was like a thank you so much for showing up
Yes,
and doing
awesome.
this too,
Thank you.
yeah, it would have been very awkward for me and John to try to parse this out together for Krang's amusement as we awkwardly talk about our view on this. So it was honestly, you had a lot to say, and it was like really refreshing to hear some of your takes and stuff like that. So thanks so much, Rachel, for coming on. And this is Rachel-O-Rama, and you can go ahead if you want to say one final last word, and then we'll close this out.
Just that you can find me on all of my socials under Rachel-O-Rama, Rachael, and especially my Instagram. I'm the most active on that, and I love submissions and song requests.
All right. Hell yeah. All right, dudes. We'll wrap this up. Great conversation. Rachel, once again, thank you. And John, we're closing it out, man. All right. So peace out, dudes.
All right. Thanks again, Rachel.
Thank you.